Hi, how are you guys? Sorry for the delay. Standard cosplayer time, 5 to 10 minutes late. So yes, I am Sameer Tikka Masala. I'm a cosplayer from India. And
I'm Amber or Anilik, and I'm a cosplayer from Scotland.
So today we're going to talk about foam crafting because like the armor that I'm wearing is like a casual in RES because I had actually planned to wear the whole costume, but I realized I won't be able to move or talk much in that. So I'm doing like a casual version. So as you can see, I am really passionate about cosplay, foam crafting, because that's the medium that I started with, and I think it's the most versatile medium ever because like it's available. So I'm from India, like I mentioned before, and over there we don't like at least 3 or 4 years back we didn't even have Wobla. So we were like using we were using things like cardboard, paper, resin, like we were doing all the old school method of pepakura with, covering it with resin. So when we discovered foam, our life changed completely. So we really love using foam over there because again, it's like cheap, super cheap, and very convenient and easy to use, and we can almost make everything with foam. So that's what we're going to talk about today. You want to say something?
Yeah, so this was mainly Sameer's panel, but I also have quite a lot of experience with foam, so I just thought I might be able to add some things like, for example, obviously this is like a big armor foam build, but I just wanted to show you some of the other ways you can also use foam for smaller pieces and costumes. Like, for example, I've got these 2 props that I made here that we'll talk about more later, but these both have a base of foam. Obviously this is just like a foam prop that looks like foam, whereas this, it is covered in fabric, but it does have a foam shell to it. So as you know, like we said, foam is very versatile.
So I would like to apologize for one thing. I thought like I would have like a laptop on here, so I had like pictures that I wanted to show you, but
the pictures
they
in
might.
there.
Oh, they are showing pictures. Nice.
Yeah.
So because I'm unable to control the pictures, I'm gonna like talk about the pictures that come up on screen. Nice. Yeah. So go. Okay, so I'm just gonna talk about this. That's fine. That's fine. Okay. Cool. So, like like whenever you've seen foam work, right? It's why I like foam work compared to other medium is because of this technique. It's very random right now, but what I want to tell by this is basically layering. Okay. So in foam, because like you have like different thicknesses, 5 mm, 10 mm, 12, it goes up to 20 mm. Where I am, I'm not sure if it goes out higher than that. Like it goes up to 20 mm, and like whatever shape you need to make, you can always stack up pieces on top of each other and like make whatever shape you want. So like this is a shield. Can you show like the completed photo of the shield in there? Yes, this one. Okay. So this is the shield that the photo was. Oh, I'm gonna get the remote quickly. Hey, nice. Don't worry. They have patience. So yeah, so this is, I would say this is, it looks very complicated. Like to anyone who is new to foam crafting, anyone who knows foam crafting knows like this is very basic stuff. But the thing about this prop is basically it's just layers upon layers of foam. Like I didn't do anything special in this. I didn't have used pepakura or anything. I just saw the design in the game. I'll show you the design. Wait. Yeah, too many things. Yes, see, yeah. So one thing I would definitely like to talk about is references. Before you start any project, it's very important to collect all the references. And sometimes you might think it's very difficult because, like, you can't always. Not every game has the option to turn around the character and look at all the angles and everything. But I assure you, if you reach out to the developers and like ask them for game or for like whatever, like even like the anime and all the TV shows that come, you can always find like some kind of concept art on the internet. If not concept art, then there's always going to be someone who has already made that cosplay. So what I did in this case was like it was a very complicated design, and I didn't want to like I'm a stickler for getting the details accurate. So what I did was I messaged the designer of this character. This character is Ares. This is the character. It's from a game called Smite. So I worked on that cosplay. So I basically messaged the guy who did the concept art for the game, and I told him to send me the designs, and he did. He was kind enough to send me all the designs. So I just got this design, and I literally just traced it. I printed it on like a large sheet, like the size that I wanted, and I cut individual parts, like you will see here. Oh, we are at the start again. Yeah, like this. So it's like you can see, I basically just traced the individual parts on like layers upon layers upon layers. I basically identified what comes first and what goes on top of it. So like all the details that you see in this are basically just stacked on top of each other, and then eventually I sanded it all, I did all the details, and it came out to like this. It's the same thing, I think, is what Amber uses, but like she said, we always, when we think of foam crafting, a lot of us think of like armors, like huge things or whatever, but it's used in so many surprising ways that we don't even realize. Like you can talk about all the things.
Yeah, so I'll just talk about these props here. So these are both from Yanfei from Genshin Impact. I wore this costume yesterday in case anyone saw it. So for this one, this is just entirely made out of foam, various layers that are just sort of glued together. I think we'll talk about glues and tools later, maybe.
Yeah,
I think that'd be good.
Okay.
Whereas this one here, I don't know if you could just sort of hold it. So for example, on the inside, you can see it does have foam on the inside. And then based on that foam pattern, you can create the same pattern for fabric to then create a cover around it. So obviously you get a nice rigid shape because of the foam, but it blends in with the rest of the costume parts that are sewn because it's like the same matching fabric. Another technique that I use foam for like so much is this gold trim here. So that is a 2mm layer of foam, which is very thin, and that has gold fabric glued around it, and you get these sort of gold details on like so many costumes these days, especially in Genshin, and because it's foam underneath, it's like a very nice clean shape, and you can just, like I have these on like the skirt and the top of the costume, and I use that technique like in so many costumes now. Yeah, so.
Yeah, you should check her work on her Instagram, like, and she posts like a lot of work in progress, and it was surprising to me, like, because I am someone who is good with foam, but I'm not that good with stitching, and that is that's saying it nicely. So like when I saw her work in progress, when I saw her costumes, I thought that, oh, everything is like stitched and all the details that are there are like completely hand stitched. But then I saw like how many foam elements are in there. And that which I didn't realize, which was like very smartly used. So like I said, like even though I've been working in foam with like 10 years, I'm still learning so many new techniques from how other people use different like foam in different kind of ways. So okay, we can go back to the photos. Okay, yes.
Do you want to talk about like patterning and work our way through it, maybe? Patterning?
Okay. Hello. Can you go to the pattern folder? These are Matt's 5's photos.
Oh, I knew that instantly,
yes.
yeah.
So you can talk about it.
So yeah, I just thought it might be good to sort of work our way through the whole process of making like a foam armor like this. So for example, to make foam patterns, a common method is to first wrap yourself in like masking tape. So obviously she's wrapped her leg in that, and then she would like trace out in pen the rough shape of the armor. So then you get that, you take it off, put it flat onto paper, and then you've got an armor piece that is fitting to your own body. And then obviously you can like modify it from there on. So this is what the pattern piece would look like flat. And quite an important thing that does take a lot of practice is to learn the different sort of 3D shapes, because obviously I'll just use him as an example. So if you look at his hip pieces like front on, it just looks like a straight like triangle. But obviously because it's 3D, it's got a curve here. So the pattern piece, if you lay this out flat, would be a line, and then a curve like that. The same with like the shoulders. Shoulders for me, the chest piece too. Because you can see there's like a 3D curve, and on here there's like a curve as well. And the same, you can see it there. I don't know if next one.
Yep.
Yeah, so this just shows what all the pattern pieces would look like when they're sort of put together.
The good thing about this method is basically this is like this cosplay is very difficult to do with the tape method because it's basically, you can see it's like flying on my shoulder. It's not like body hugging. But if you're making cosplays which are like fit to your body and like especially for the parts like bracer or like the leg armor or things like that, so you can use this method so that the pattern is exactly fitting on your hand, and like she has done over here, you can see like once you have the tape or whatever on you, can you go back.
Oh, back,
so,
okay.
Yeah, so like she basically got the basic pattern, and then on top of that you can draw all the details and then cut individual parts and all, and then basically with such a simple technique you can make something as complex as this. It's just, like I said, just layering, just putting one thing on top of another, just identifying what the different layers will be and things like that. So yeah, that's how basically paper patterning works. I think she has more examples.
Yep. Next one.
Yeah,
So this is obviously like chest armor. Chest armor in particular is probably one of the trickiest ones to make, especially because it's usually quite form-fitting. Obviously that's like a more like oversized one, but if you want to get like a really tight fit, then it does take quite a lot of attempts. But when you're working with foam, don't be afraid to make it over and over, especially because foam isn't too expensive, so you can waste a piece and then you can like cut it down and modify it, and then you can always like remake it all over again for your final piece, so it's like nice and clean.
It's always also very easy to modify like something existing. Like even if I say I make a design and it's smaller in certain portions, like I feel okay, like it's getting tight over here, you can just like add a strip of foam and like just expand it, like expand the size or whatever. So that's why it's like very convenient to basically do prototyping in foam. Even if you want to work in a different medium, say like Wobla, or even like get into 3D printing later on, like make your armor. If you have your basic shape done in foam, it's good to like find a form that would be fitting to you, and then you can use that to translate into other mediums.
These are just more examples of different types of patterns.
Yeah, a lot of times, the examples we were giving before were like what body hugging things, but there are a lot of times you need like smaller pieces which might not be very complicated, but like very unobvious. Like, can you go back? So like she's making a template for a horn, okay? And what she did was basically she sculpted the horn with aluminum foil. Again, another very cheap medium. Yeah, so like she basically just built like a horn out of aluminum foil and then used the tape to again do the tape method. Yeah, so, and again, on top of this, you can draw all the details. If you do next, I think she has done the details. See, again, it opens up, and so yeah, I think you get the idea that, like whatever shape you want, we even use sometimes, like, what do you call it, monster clay or like polymer clay to like make like a basic shape on top of the things that we want to detail, and then cover it with tape, and then, and then take out all the different tape patterns to then transfer it to foam.
As you can see in this photo, all of like the sort of small lines, those are usually called like registration marks, and that's used to sort of help you match up the pattern pieces, because even if you get it off, if you like when you're gluing it together, if you like sort of misalign it by even a few millimeters, that can like build up. If you keep making those mistakes, and then at the end your pattern won't fit like it should. So these marks are really useful just to sort of help you keep it aligned as you make it.
Yeah, like so I didn't mention it, but the best part about foam is that when you heat it up, it basically stretches. It forms and like it curves into whatever shape you want. So like if you have a flat piece of foam, but then you heat it up, it kind of turns. It kind of curves around. So the good thing about that is like you can make almost any shape. The bad thing about it is you need to control it. Like you don't want to overheat it or like overstretch or something like that. So these registration lines basically help with that. Like if you have the lines, like where each section of the foam connects together. So like these lines, they connect in between, and if you accidentally stretch it, you can squish it and like make sure that the lines align.
So yeah, as you can see, a horn is actually probably also a very complicated piece to make. Usually in general, the more curved the piece, the harder it is, because you've just got to get the right amount of curve, but that just sort of comes with practice. Yeah, as you can see, there's like a million pieces for this one horn.
So cosplay, I would say that foam crafting does take a bit of patience.
Yeah.
Because like even in this piece, if you see like all the can you show this? Like, can you show it like this on
Oh.
the video? Yeah, on here. Yeah. So if you see this part, or like if you see this part, there are like so many different like things that are going on here, like these lines and everything, and all of these pieces are basically individual foam sheets. Like I basically cut them. I cut them in different angles. We're gonna talk about angles a bit. So like we cut them in different angles and then we stuck them together. So like something like this is like very plain. It's very plain and has like just layers. But something like this has so many small parts. So it does take a bit of patience, but like you can literally do anything with just a little bit of patience.
Don't be overwhelmed though. I mean, obviously this is a very complicated armor to make. You can start with a like way easier costume, which I'd recommend doing, and then just sort of like getting used to the basics, and then you can like work your way up to something like that. So don't be intimidated and just like, you know, don't be afraid to start trying to make armor.
So this is another piece that I made. Can you do the next photo?
Next one?
No.
Yeah.
So this is another of the piece that I made. Wait, I'll show you. Yeah, so these are like some of the examples of different kind of props you can make. So this is like something like this. Again, like I said, you can just get a reference picture, print it out in the large scale size, and you can then cut out individual parts and make the pattern for it. But there's also a software called Pepakura, which is like how I make these complicated armors. It's a slightly advanced technique in the sense that you need to use like 3D models, and you need to have like a PC to use it. But a lot of times you can find these templates, like I said, like on internet you can always find someone who has, there's a lot of cosplayers, so you can always find someone who has done your cosplay, and people are really generous and nice, so they release a lot of templates for free online or like very reasonable rates. So like Anneliek has her Patreon where she releases all her templates that she make cosplays. So you can get these templates for pretty cheap, and you can use them to make like all your props. I'll show you some examples. Yeah, so like these things, like these are like basic. We usually work in like very low poly models, like this model. This is for a mascot. This is not cosplay, but see, you can the techniques that I've learned in foam craft in cosplay, I use it in industry also. I basically work as a art director for like TV shows and movies and events back in India for Bollywood. So I make costumes for some of the TV shows, and I use this technique for a lot of them. So basically I just make like a normal 3D print, which is like low poly, and then I can, if you imagine like a box, you know, like you must have seen those packing box, right? If you cut all the edges and you open it, you would get like a plus kind of a thing. So it's basically the same concept, but it just looks more complicated because the shapes are more different. But at the end of the day, it's just like using like opening up a 3D model and trying to find the different planes. So this is like, this is like an example of like an armor like this. Again, like it looks really complicated. It kind of is complicated, but the thing is like, so you can see all the different sections in it. So like I cut it into like many different parts and just stuck them together. So I mean, this is something really advanced, but you can see the possibilities like of just one simple technique that I use, and I can use it in so many different ways. Yeah, so like this is an example. Like I basically did this model low poly in like a 3D software, and then I used that to basically build this helmet, right? It's the same, and then as you can see over here there's not a lot of details on the armor, right? There are not a lot of details on the model. I basically, what I do is I don't use 3D to get everything on the model. I basically use it for the structure. Like even for this, I got the chest shape, I got the shape of the shoulder, and then once I built like the like the base of the structure, I did all the detailings on top of that using the tape method that you saw earlier on. Like so, once I make a structure, so once I made the basic structure, I basically taped my foam shape. Once I was satisfied with the size of the helmet, I basically taped my foam shape and then drew on all the details on top of it and then transferred that back onto the foam and then stuck it again on my helmet. So it's the same thing, you're just doing it, using it in very different ways. Okay, so we can go back to the other folder, the one we were watching before. You wanna say something? Talk about something? You wanna talk about something?
Yes, I mean these are all just different examples of patterning. Obviously, the most basic one is the first one we spoke about, which is wrapping yourself in tape. And then, as Samir mentioned, like the 3D software. And then a third option is many cosplayers sell their own patterns on stores like Etsy. That are maybe just like basic breastplate patterns, basic, like shoulder armor, and then you could always just buy those and like modify the shape. So there's like so many different ways to pattern, and it's just like something that comes with practice, and you figure out which like method you find the easiest.
Like a lot of, so this is a very specific kind of a cosplay, but there are a lot of cosplays which use like the basic kinds of shape. For example, like if I was to make like a general of a war army or something, if I wanted to make some like a Japanese warrior, like some samurai or something. The thing is, like most of them have like a set pattern of armor that there is. There might be slight modifications on the border, there might be modifications on the details, but like they use basic, like the basic structure of the cosplay. So what you can do is you can find online like the basic like foam templates. There are a lot of amazing people who sell them, like Kamui sell them, Evil Ted sells them. There's a lot of creators who have like basic foam shapes and foam shapes and patterns in their stores. You can get them, and then like I said, you can add a strip somewhere. You can not just on top, like if you want it more curvy, you can add like a piece in between. You want like larger, you can add pieces on the side. So you can modify all those patterns. So over here on this, I'm going to talk about some of the detailing techniques that I use. Like this is just to break down like how I showed you like a shield with the lion in the middle, right? So I'm going to try to break down how to make things like that. I'll show you the finished piece first. Yeah, so this is like how it looks finished, okay? So you can see the other parts are very, what do you call it? Very, you can understand how those are working, but the lion is actually what a lot of people get surprised at. Everyone thinks that I maybe 3D printed the lion, or maybe I, like got it, like made it in some sort of like sculpting or something, but it's basically just layers upon layers of foam. As you can see, like I basically identified, okay, that I need to have the mane of the lion as the very base, and then the details in the middle, like the two curvy things in the middle, and then on top of that, I need to have the face, and on top of that, I need to have the snout, and on top of that, I need to have the nose. So I identify all the different layers, and then I sculpt it and detail all the layers individually. Like, yeah, this is the finished lion. But then this is basically the base shape with the snout, and I'm going to start from the beginning. Okay, yeah. So this is the very base. Okay, I realized, okay, I needed like the shape of the lion first. So I drew all the details on top of it. I use, there's a tool called rotary tool. I'm pretty sure a lot of you guys have already seen it, right? So the rotary tool, there's a lot of bits and pieces that you can get online. Most of the people, I think, where they don't realize the potential of like a rotary tool is like Dremel or something, is basically they use only the sanding drum. And sanding drum is used to, what we use sanding drum is like to chip off large portions of the foam and also like smooth out the borders and everything. But if you go online or like you go to a store, and you can find a lot of shapes of different bits, like stone bits and all those things. And I use all those bits to carve in details. But I'll talk about that in a second. So you can see like all the squiggly lines that I draw are basically what the mane is supposed to be. And then on top of that, I added like you can't see here properly, but like this is, I cut out the face from the mane. See, like it is the complete shape, but I cut out the face and this part from the mane. Then I dremeled all the details on the side mane. Then I added the face again with all the details, like you can see the difference from here. It's just basically I drew all the details, and over here I dremeled out all the details with, with like rotary tool. Then I added the snout on the face, and I did detailing on that. So it's just layers upon layers, and then I added like a nose. It's very subtle, but you can see like this one has like a flat nose and like flat mustache area, but then I rounded it further and I added like a nose, I added teeth, so like a simple shape turned into like a complex shape, right? Just by layering. Okay. This is again another example of like how you can get so much detail from reveling. Sorry for the feet content. Yeah. So yeah, again, like I wanted to have like a wood structure in there. So I just like stuck like some pieces of foam together, and I carved out all the details on top of it with Dremel. So Dremel is like, if you want to be a foam crafter, I would say like you only need like three tools. You need a cutter, you need a heat gun to shape, and you need a Dremel. And if you have those things, I have worked with foam for like 5 to 6 years with only those tools. Now I use more advanced techniques. I use 3D printing and everything. Like this face, at one point I would have made this face with like foam, but it would have taken me a lot of time. But now, because I have 3D printer and I also don't compete in cosplay that much, so I basically try to do things as fast as I can instead of as as complicated as I can. So like I use 3D printed parts now. Oh yeah, this my face on the shoulder was 3D printed. Okay.
I just wanted to quickly add, so obviously, like Samir mentioned, like a rotary tool or a Dremel, it does like create a lot of dust when you sand. So sometimes you're left with quite a rough texture on the foam, and quite a good way to get rid of that, if you have the heat gun and you just like go over the foam with that, it can sometimes get rid of some of that rough texture, just because foam is like very porous, like it has like lots of tiny holes in it. So when you apply heat to that, those holes sort of close up, and that sort of like seals the foam, and that can help to get rid of like some of the rough texture when you work with it.
It also burns out all the fuzziness, like all the small threads and everything. It kind of burns it off. But you gotta make sure to like, if you're gonna heat foam, remember to do it in like in a ventilated space, because it kind of burns up and smells sometimes.
Yeah.
So like again, this is another example. I was working on the Killmonger mask from Black Panther. So you can see like I just made the basic shape. This is what I was talking about. Like I used Pepakura. I made the 3D model and used Pepakura to make the basic shape. But then I drew all the details on top of it and I dremeled everything. And so this is how I basically turned a basic shape into like a very detailed piece, which doesn't look like it's like a flat piece, but it is a flat piece. And you can actually even enhance the shape with a lot of painting. But we're going to talk about that after this. Yeah, again, like the example of this, like, so this is basically a basic shape for my leg armor, but then I drew the details on top, and all the, there's a lot of drawing, a lot of crying involved in this process. Yeah, so this is something very fun. This is like foam abs. You cannot tell, but I don't have abs. So I need abs when I'm working on like cosplays, which shows the mid region of my stomach. So you can always get like silicone body suits and whatever, but you still like need a kind of flat tummy for that. Okay. So what I do over here is basically this is just one sheet of foam. It doesn't have, it's not cut into like separate parts. It's just like one sheet of foam. What I do with this is, sadly I don't have a picture of the back, but I will tell you how. So basically, again, I draw all the details. Like I draw all the different shapes of the abs on the abdomen on the flat sheet of foam. And basically, like I said, when you heat up foam, it expands. So literally all the individual sections that you see are basically, I basically cut a slit in the back on the lines that I have drawn. And once you heat it up, what happens is like the part which is where you have drawn the line and you have cut with the knife, basically the parts apart from that, basically they swell up. So it's basically just like drawing all the details, cutting it up, and then just heating the pieces, and automatically all these pieces swell up. It's very easy technique to use, and like once you try it, it seems a bit complicated, but it's super fun to use for a lot of details. Okay. Yeah, so like again, like layers, but then like all the details done with dremeling and things like that. Okay. Cool. So we can go to the weathering and painting thing. You want to talk about anything else about painting?
I don't think you've got any photos of it, but another way to sculpt details like this is that there's now a thing that exists called foam clay. So this is fairly new, but it's basically like normal clay that you can buy. It's like, you know, squishy, you can like mold it, and then you can sculpt it into whatever shape you want. You can add some water to make it easier to sculpt. And then once it dries in about a day or two, it basically just like turns into EVA foam, which is like magic. So instead of carving out all of these details with a Dremel, you could add this clay on top and then sculpt them with like a tool or just with your hands. And you know, you can try both methods and just figure out what works for you. Yeah.
Again, like it completely depends on what kind of result you want. Like if you want something which has a little bit more volume, like even though this is curved into a flat sheet and it has volume, but if you look at from the side, it's like flat, right? Mm-hmm. But with foam clay, you can build up volume on the foam itself, right? You can make like round shapes and all those things without. The only thing with foam clay is like you have to be a bit delicate. Like it's like sculpting. It's basically just sculpting. So if you have worked with sculpting, you know, you just need to be a bit delicate with the shapes and all. So it's like the same with foam clay. With this, you can be a bit brutish. Okay, we can go to the weathering folder. Painting and something. Oh yes, okay.
Oh.
So what we're gonna talk about again, like this is a cosplay from one of our amazing friend, Mads 5. She's a cosplayer from French, and she's epic. So
yeah, she's really good.
Like I said, like you can see, like although over here the parts still look a bit flat, but you can make them so much dynamic with painting. Like so you can see all the edges that she has rubbed off. Like it basically tells you where the edge is, and you can do the dark crevices on different parts of the armor. And so this is like the basic paint that she has done. But then on top of that, when you add all the battle damage and all the shading, you realize like you can even enhance the shape with painting. So yeah,
before we talk about painting, do you want to mention priming foam?
Oh yes.
Yeah.
You can talk about that.
So when you get like raw foam, you know, when you just buy a roll of foam, it's this like grey stuff here, and if you touch it, like, you know, on the inside of the hat, and when you touch it, it's very spongy. So if you were to apply paint straight onto that foam, it would literally just absorb the paint, and it would just not look good. So before you apply the paint, you've got to prime the foam, and there's various ways of priming it. My current favourite one to use is called Hexflex. I'll tell you where to get that at the end, because we'll talk about where to buy foam. And that's basically, it looks like white glue, like PVA glue, and you just brush that onto the foam. But the best thing about this type of primer is that it's flexible, because obviously if you just get foam on its own, you can bend it. But obviously paint doesn't bend, so it's really, really important to get a primer that will also bend with the foam so that the paint doesn't crack as easily. I don't know what your favourite primer is. You can spray primer?
We are limited on options over there. We only get PVA glue, we don't get Flex Bond and all. But I have used Flex Bond after importing. And
that's similar. It's basically the same.
Yeah, Flex, yeah, Hex Flex.
Yeah. But another common one, I personally don't like it, is like Plasti Dip. And various other versions of that. It's basically like a spray can, and it's a sort of like rubbery coat that comes out of it, and that's quite popular with cosplayers. Personally, I don't really like it because it's quite messy, whereas with the brush-on primer, you can obviously do that indoors without any like toxic fumes. But yeah, the priming stage, like, don't skip it. Like, your foam just won't turn out good without it, so priming is like really important before you can then move on to the painting stage.
Okay, so like you can see over here, we can't go back. Okay. So yeah, so like I said, like as you can see, like I've done like a lot of shading on the edges over here. Like the edges are like darkened a bit, and then the parts which are like the plain are basically I've added highlight to give it more of a round-looking shape. I think we are short on time, right? Okay, 5 minutes. Okay. So I'm just going to talk about weathering techniques really quickly. Yeah, so like you can see, like all the dark edges, I've basically added dark parts, and on the highlighted parts, I've added highlights. And you can also make textures like this. And how you do that is basically you can either use foam clay, like foam clay is a very accessible thing that you can use for this, but there's also a thing called modeling paste. I think it's used by the painters who like to work on like textured canvas. So they usually use the modeling clay to make a texture on the canvas and then paint on top of it. So you can use the same thing for EVA foam. Like you can see, like I've added so much gunk on top of it because I wanted it to look like something that has been dug out of, like it's like an iron piece which has been dug out of from the ground or something. So I added all the different, I did all the battle damage with Dremel obviously, but all the things that you see, like all the grains and all, are basically added by the modeling paste. Once you have like a very good technique is once you work on the textures on the base foam, your painting would be super fast. Like on this one, there's some weathering on here. I haven't weathered it like a lot, but because I have all the crevices, like I said, like all the dark edges are one on top of each other, I can literally paint this whole costume on a flat sheet and it can still look good. I know cosplayers who are like so amazing with painting. There's a cosplayer called Ginoza Cosplay. Like she's so amazing with painting, like she can make a flat piece look like a completely 3D painting, okay? But if you like make all the details in layers, like you can if you add all the textures, you literally just have to like do one coat of like your favorite primer or like base paint or whatever, and then you can just oil wash the whole thing and you get like so this is completely oil washed. I did this costume in like 2 weeks, so I literally had less time, so I did all the detailing and texturing in foam work, and then I just oil washed the whole thing, and that's how it looks. So you can see all the details where like the highlights are, where the dark parts are. Yeah, and then like you can make like paint can literally give life to like a very lifeless looking, like see this looks like a very plain prop, not as impressive, it's just like flat, right? But like with painting, like this is the priming stage. With painting you can basically add so much life to a piece, and this looks so different from the piece that we started, right? It's still the same piece, but painting is like magic. Okay. Yeah, like I'll just show one of my favorite pieces. Like, yeah, this is one of my favorite pieces that I've built recently, Chainsaw Man. I love the anime. So yeah, like doing all the details and everything. Like even like on parts like this, you see like I did like the silver edging on the borders, right? It basically gives that feeling of a metal which has been rubbed off and all those things. Okay, you wanted to talk about something?
Yeah, there's like different types of paint. There's spray paint. There's like brush on paint. One really useful tool is an airbrush. That really improved my painting skills. They're not too expensive. I just use cheap airbrushes from like Amazon, and that really helps to get a gradient, because unless you're like a really, really experienced painter, it's really hard to get like a smooth gradient just by hand. So an airbrush is like, the ideal tool to create like shading and like color gradients, for example.
If any of you, I think like that pretty much sums up the things that we wanted to talk about. Do you want to talk about anything else?
How much time do we have? 5 minutes. Do you want to do questions? Like
yeah,
audience?
I think we can do questions. Yeah.
So if you've got a question, please like raise your hand.
Thank you. So I have a question about Hexflex.
Yeah.
Because I was using it, and when I was painting it, I was painting, and I noticed that my brush is black again. Like the color I was using was beige, and it like seeped through. I don't know how to describe it.
Oh, do you mean like you could see the Hexflex through the paint, or?
It was like maybe like 4 layers of color, and still was black, like it was.
So basically what happens is like you need to identify that like different colors have different pigmentation. When I say pigmentation, is like how thick the paint is, right? So I think what you're saying is that like even when you painted it beige, the color didn't come out beige, right?
It was beige, but as I was painting the same plaques, it just become black. It was like, and also my paintbrush was black. It was like the Hexflex started to be activated again on.
What color of was it black Hexflex that you
Black.
use? Oh, right, okay, so it comes in like various colors. I personally use the clear one. I think that's like, you know, best for most circumstances. So I'd recommend the clear Hex Flex. It's like the same price, so maybe that might help in future.
Thank you.
Always give time for your primer to
Yeah.
dry properly, because
It was sitting like for a week, so.
okay, yeah, because what happens is like a lot of the times if you are using I don't know what kind of color you were using, because what happens is like if you use something which uses like oils, or maybe like if you're doing oil painting, like if you use turpentine, sometimes turpentine can rub off the base paint, okay, and if you're using thinner with it, so like all these things also matter. So always give time for your primer to dry, and my advice is always use acrylic colors, because that's the most convenient one, and it's also waterproof. So once you're done with painting, you literally don't have to do anything. You can, but you don't have to seal it or anything. It's just good on its own.
Okay.
Anyone else?
Thank you.
Hi, so do you use any kind of top coat on your cosplays?
It depends on the kind of finishing I want. So like if like this is a very it has like mix of different kind of structure. Like the dark parts I wanted it to be matte, but like the highlight parts I want it to be silver. In that case I won't use a top coat. I would use the medium specific to that. So like I'll use like a glossy medium with the silver parts, with the silver paint, but I will use like a matte medium with the black paint, so that you know the parts which are black are less shiny. So it looks nice. Like in general, in the photo you can't recognize it that much, but when you see it in person, you'll see that you know like these parts are highlighted and these parts don't have a shine to them, and it really adds to the weathered nature of the cosplay. So, but if you want like an Iron Man cosplay, like Iron Man is completely glossy. It's like supposed to be completely metal, right? And it doesn't have that much battle damage or grime on top of it. He's a billionaire. He keeps his thing clean. So on top of something like that, I would always use like a clear coat, so that the paint is also sealed, and then the extra layer of lacquer makes everything shine and pop off. But I would also say that if you use gloss lacquer, the paint doesn't show through. So if you've done like a lot of what do you call it, like if it's not a flat paint, have you done some kind of shading, or you've done some kind of weathering on top of it, if you use gloss, because of the light reflections and everything, you won't be able to see the paint properly. In that case, I always prefer like a matte lacquer, matte top coat, so that you are able to see all the painted details properly.
Thank you so much.
So you mix acrylic paints with acrylic mediums?
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you. Hi. You mentioned those little bits, the rough bits that you get on foam when you're dremeling. And I wanted to know if it's possible to get it nice and smooth with the Dremel if you put enough elbow grease in, or is the heat gun my only option?
So I don't know if you've tried different bits on the end of your Dremel. So you've got like the rough sanding drum, but you also get one that's like a sort of like hard stone. I don't know, have you tried that?
I did, yeah.
Oh, okay. I mean, you can go at that for hours and hours, but it also depends on the density of the foam. So usually, like, it depends what shop you get it from, but like you get 65 density or like 100, and the higher the density, the less fuzzy bits you get, because like the foam is really hard. So when you like sand it, it won't like take as much of it away. So higher density foam is like a lot easier to sand and won't have as much like fuzzy bits to begin with.
Yeah, like the hard density foams, basically when you sand it, it basically doesn't chip off the chunks. It's basically very powder that comes out, right? So it's very uniform. But like you said, you can use like stone bit. But before I knew of stone bits, you can actually use like high grit sandpapers, like say like 250 or 320 grit sandpaper, and you can go on. I do that like when because sometimes I'm traveling, and I always don't use like really high density foam all the time, because again high density foam is like more expensive. If I'm making a cosplay for like a competition or something, I would use like the best kind of foam. But if it's like for something like I work in like I said, I work in the industry, and over there what happens is like a lot of time like if I make like a costume or a prop, it's going to be on screen only for like 30 seconds, right? So like I need to cut down the cost, so I use like super like cheap foam sheets, so that I don't spend too much, and to cover that I basically use sandpaper to smooth out the edges. And like she said, like you can heat it, and then heating also burns out all the fuzziness. Yeah, and the best answer is also like use multiple layers of primer. Like brush-on primers are my favorite. I don't like spray primers too much because I think spray primers crack and they're like hard to manage. Like sometimes I know like plastic dip can like if you screw up with plastic dip, you're screwed. It's very hard to like take it off or something. So you can use multiple layer of like brush-on primers like Hex Flex to like smooth out the surface.
You can also like kind of sand Hex Flex too. You have to use like a very, very fine sandpaper, like I say like 600, 800 like and above. And once you've applied your Hex Flex, you can also just like apply a bit of water to it, and that helps get rid of some of the brush strokes. And you can sand it with a really high grit paper, and like I do that sometimes, but that's only if I have like tons of extra time because it's really time consuming. So yeah.
Thank you very much.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you so much. Thank you for being patient with us, and sorry for the rough start. But I hope like you guys learned something, and we're gonna be there at our booths, and I'm always available. I don't have a lot of fans, so I'm always free. So you can come and talk to me if you have any questions, and I would be more than happy to help you. I love working with foam, and I'm super excited. Can I just ask like who has not cosplayed here before? Are there any first-time cosplayers? Oh, well, that's amazing. Like in India, like the number of hands is usually very large. And who is like trying to get into foam crafting and have not done a lot of foam crafting before? Oh, that's nice. That's nice. So yeah, so like if you're getting into foam crafting and like you would like to ask us any of the thing, you can come to our booth. We are here for at least the next 2 hours or something, and we'll be more than happy to answer you. And thank you. Follow us on our social medias. Like I'm Samir Tikka Masala.
I'm Anilik. Our names are on our like posters over there.
Yeah.
So.
Do you want to say something too?
Yeah, thank you again for coming. I hope you managed to learn something. Foam is just something that takes practice, but you will get there. You know, I'm not as good as him at foam either.
Oh, she's amazing.
No. So yeah.
Okay. Thank you.